Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
I stood in front of the courthouse, my heart racing as I checked my watch for the 100th time. 9:55 a.m. Just 5 more minutes until the judge would deliver his ruling on the ridiculous lawsuit my HOA had brought against me. 18 months of stress, sleepless nights, and financial strain were about to come to an end. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. "Hey, you made it." I turned to see my neighbor and fellow HOA rebel, Chloe, jogging up the steps. "I wouldn't miss this for the world. We're all rooting for you." I managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Chloe. I just hope this nightmare is finally over." As we walked into the courtroom, I spotted the HOA board members huddled together, whispering furiously. Their lawyer, a smug-looking man in an expensive suit, sat at the plaintiff's table, shuffling papers with an air of confidence that made my stomach churn. My attorney, Lisa, waved us over. "How are you holding up?" she asked, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze. "As well as can be expected," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Any last-minute predictions?" Lisa's eyes sparkled. "After the judge's visit to your property, I'd say things are looking good, but let's not count our chickens just yet." The bailiff called the court to order, and everyone scrambled to their seats. I sat down, my legs feeling like jelly, as the judge entered the room. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Thompson," the bailiff announced. As we stood, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished wood of the table. I looked pale and tired, the stress of the past year and a half etched into the lines of my face. This whole ordeal had aged me, but I was determined to see it through. Judge Thompson settled into his chair and surveyed the room. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, and I thought I saw a hint of a smile. "Be seated," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "In the matter of Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association versus Johnson, I am prepared to deliver my ruling," Judge Thompson began. "This case has been a long and, in my opinion, unnecessarily protracted affair. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, including my personal inspection of the property in question, I have reached a decision." I held my breath, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. Chloe reached over and gave my shoulder a supportive squeeze. "It is the finding of this court that the defendant, Mr. Johnson, has not violated any reasonable covenant or restriction set forth by the Sunnyside Estates Homeowners Association. The patio and gazebo in question are well constructed, aesthetically pleasing, and in no way detrimental to the community or property values." A collective gasp went up from the HOA board members. Their lawyer's jaw dropped, and he began furiously scribbling notes. Judge Thompson continued, his voice growing sterner. "Furthermore, this court finds that the Sunnyside Estates HOA has engaged in a pattern of harassment and abuse of power that goes beyond the scope of their authority. Their actions in this matter have been unreasonable, vindictive, and a waste of this court's time and resources." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My heart soared as Judge Thompson's words washed over me, each one a vindication of everything I'd been fighting for. "Therefore, it is the order of this court that all claims against Mr. Johnson are dismissed with prejudice. The Sunnyside Estates HOA is hereby enjoined from any further action against Mr. Johnson regarding his patio and gazebo." The HOA lawyer jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, we respectfully request—" Judge Thompson cut him off with a sharp look. "I'm not finished, Counselor. In light of the HOA's egregious behavior, this court is imposing sanctions. The Sunnyside Estates HOA is ordered to pay all of Mr. Johnson's legal fees and court costs associated with this case. Additionally, the court is ordering an independent audit of the HOA's finances and practices to be conducted at the HOA's expense." The courtroom erupted in murmurs and gasps. I sat there, stunned, as Lisa leaned over and whispered, "We did it. This is even better than we hoped for." Judge Thompson banged his gavel, calling for order. "Furthermore, I am recommending a full investigation into the HOA board's conduct by the appropriate authorities. This level of overreach and abuse of power cannot be tolerated in our community." As the judge continued to detail the consequences facing the HOA, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't just a victory for me. It was a victory for everyone who had ever felt bullied or pushed around by their HOA. After the judge concluded and left the bench, the courtroom burst into activity. Lisa was grinning from ear to ear as she shook my hand vigorously. "Congratulations, this is a landmark decision. It's going to set a precedent for HOA cases all over the state." Chloe threw her arms around me in a bear hug. "You did it. You stood up to those tyrants and won." As we made our way out of the courtroom, I was surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. Many of them were fellow homeowners who had their own horror stories about dealing with the HOA. One elderly gentleman approached me with tears in his eyes. "Thank you, son. I've lived in fear of that HOA for years. They fined me for having a rose bush that was 2 inches taller than their arbitrary limit. Maybe now things will change." Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered, including a local news crew. As I stepped into the sunlight, feeling dazed but elated, a reporter thrust a microphone in my face. "Mr. Johnson, how do you feel about the judge's ruling?" she asked, her cameraman zooming in on my face. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I feel relieved and vindicated. This was never just about a patio or a gazebo. It was about standing up to bullies who abuse their power. It was about fighting for the right to enjoy our homes without constant fear and interference. The reporter nodded encouragingly. "Do you have a message for other homeowners dealing with similar issues?" I looked directly into the camera, thinking of all the people out there facing their own HOA battles. Don't give up. Stand your ground. If your HOA is being unreasonable, gather support from your neighbors and fight back. Today's ruling shows that the courts will side with homeowners when HOAs overstep their bounds. As the interview wrapped up, I spotted the HOA board members huddled with their lawyer, looking shell-shocked and angry. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. They were my neighbors, after all. But a larger part felt a sense of justice served. Lisa approached me, her phone in hand. "The story's already hitting the local news websites. You're becoming a bit of a celebrity in the anti-HOA movement." I chuckled, feeling a mix of embarrassment and pride. I never set out to be a crusader. I just wanted to enjoy my backyard in peace. "Well, sometimes that's how movements start," Lisa replied with a wink. One person standing up and saying, "Enough is enough." As we walked down the courthouse steps, I felt a surge of energy and purpose. This victory wasn't just for me, it was for every homeowner who had ever felt powerless against an overbearing HOA. "So what's next?" Chloe asked as we reached the parking lot. I grinned, feeling more optimistic than I had in months. "First, I'm going to go home and sit on my perfectly legal patio. Then I think it's time we started organizing. There are a lot of people out there who need help standing up to their HOAs." Lisa nodded approvingly. "I can put you in touch with some advocacy groups. Your case could be the spark that ignites real change." As I drove home, my mind was buzzing with possibilities. The judge's ruling hadn't just saved my patio, it had opened up a whole new chapter in my life. I realized that this fight had awakened something in me, a passion for justice and a desire to help others. Pulling into my driveway, I saw my beautiful gazebo standing proud in the backyard. It no longer felt like a source of stress and conflict. Instead, it was a symbol of perseverance and victory. I walked out onto my patio, running my hand along the smooth bricks. The air felt fresher, the sun brighter. For the first time in 18 months, I could truly relax in my own backyard. As I settled into a chair, I heard a commotion from the street. Looking up, I saw a group of my neighbors approaching, led by Chloe. They were carrying bottles of champagne and plates of food. "Hope you don't mind," Chloe called out, grinning. "We thought a celebration was in order," I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Not at all. Come on in, everyone. The patio's open for business." As my neighbors filed in, offering congratulations and sharing their own HOA horror stories, I realized that this victory had done more than just save my patio. It had brought our community together, united against a common adversary. The impromptu party lasted well into the evening. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over my vindicated gazebo, I raised a toast to my friends and neighbors. "Here's to standing up for what's right," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "And here's to taking back our homes and our communities." The cheer that went up was loud enough to be heard all the way to the HOA president's house, I was sure. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I knew that this was just the beginning. The fight against HOA tyranny was far from over, but we had won an important battle, and with this group of determined neighbors by my side, I was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The patio that had caused so much strife had become a gathering place, a symbol of resistance and community spirit. As laughter and conversation filled the air, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the most important victories start in the most unexpected places, like a simple backyard patio. Sounds like the judge was on your side from the start. Telling them to reconsider your offer was basically saying, "You're about to lose this case." Ignoring that advice and pushing forward was a huge mistake on their part. Now, with sanctions and an audit ordered, it's clear they were complete idiots. I'm thrilled your feelings about the outcome were correct. As a lawyer for 35 years, I've learned you can never predict what a judge will do. In my last case before retiring after 2 days of trial, it took tick total. The judge looked my client in the eye and said, "I strongly urge both parties to seriously consider settling." It terrified both of us because it sounded like he wasn't on our side. But when settlement talks failed, we finished the trial, and won an overwhelming victory with attorney fees awarded. However, if you'd asked me after day 2, I'd have sworn we didn't stand a chance. Judges can be unpredictable. I've seen them favor one side throughout only to rule for the other at the very end. Your case could have gone either way until that final ruling, but it's incredible how decisively justice came through for you in this instance. Not only did you win outright, but with sanctions imposed on them and an audit ordered, that's a dream outcome for anyone fighting an HOA. Congratulations again. This is a huge win for homeowners everywhere. 1,000 years ago in law school, we had a practice clinic for third years. My first time in county court for a child support enforcement action. There was an HOA case before mine involving a woman who left her gate unrepaired. A $100 fix. Despite repeated notices from her HOA, she explained she couldn't afford it. However, instead of working with her or finding another solution, they hired someone to make repairs themselves and sued her under their covenants. The judge, an older man, was incredibly apologetic toward her, but explained that no matter how much he sympathized with her situation, he had no choice but to uphold applicable laws and covenants. He entered judgment against her for around $7,000. Repair costs, ignored fines for non-compliance, filing fees plus attorney's fees, all enforceable under those covenants. He did disallow about 25% of their billed fees but still left her owing $7,000 overall. The poor woman, clearly distraught, managed enough composure afterward only to ask what would happen if she couldn't pay. The judge, still apologetic, explained they'd place liens against her property, potentially foreclosing later. That experience taught me early on never ever trust HO, as they wield far too much control over private homes. Your story, though, it's inspiring seeing someone fight back successfully against such overreach. Your judge not only ruled decisively in your favor but also sanctioned them heavily while calling out their abusive behavior publicly. Hopefully more rulings like yours will set precedents curbing HOA unchecked power abuses long term.
If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day.
Just so you know, the names have been changed to protect the guilty and the innocent. It all started like any other Monday morning at work. The coffee was brewing, the usual chatter filled the air, and we were all gearing up for the weekly team meeting. I work for a company that specializes in home repairs and renovations, and we've been trying to expand our reach by partnering with homeowners associations, HOAs. It's a smart move, really. HOAs control a lot of the decision-making in neighborhoods, and if you can get in good with them, it's a steady stream of business. But what happened next? Well, let's just say it wasn't part of the plan. The meeting kicked off with our boss Greg going over the usual updates, new contracts, client feedback, and the usual pep talk about hitting our quarterly goals. Then, out of nowhere, Mike, one of our sales guys, decided to share what he thought was a brilliant idea. Mike's the kind of guy who loves to hear himself talk, and he always has some story or another to make himself look good. This time, though, he really outdid himself. "So I've got some great news," Mike said, leaning back in his chair with this smug grin on his face. "I'm the president of my HOA now, and I've made sure that our company is the only one allowed to handle all the exterior painting in the neighborhood. It's a done deal, no competition, just us." At first, there was this awkward silence. Everyone just kind of stared at him, trying to process what he just said. Then, slowly, the room started to buzz. People were exchanging glances, some whispering to each other, others just shaking their heads. I could feel the tension building, and it wasn't long before someone finally spoke up. "Wait, hold on, Janet," one of our project managers said, her voice sharp. "You're telling us that you're using your position as HOA president to block other companies from working in your neighborhood, and you're giving all the business to us?" Mike shrugged like it was no big deal. "Yeah, exactly. It's a win-win. We get the contracts, and the neighborhood gets quality work. What's the problem?" "The problem," Janet shot back, her tone rising, "you're taking away people's choices, Mike. They didn't elect you so you could handpick contractors for them. They trusted you to make fair decisions, not to funnel business to your own company." Mike's face flushed and he leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Come on, Janet. It's not like that. I'm doing what's best for the neighborhood. Our work is top-notch, and they'll be happy with the results. What's wrong with that?" "What's wrong is that it's unethical," I chimed in, unable to stay quiet any longer. You're abusing your position, Mike. People deserve to have options, not to be forced into using us just because you're in charge." Mike glared at me, his jaw tightening. "Oh, come on, you're just jealous because you didn't think of it first. This is how business works. You scratch my back, I scratch yours." "No, Mike," I said, my voice steady but firm. "This isn't how business works. This is how you lose people's trust. If the homeowners find out what you're doing, it's not just your reputation on the line. It's ours too." The room erupted into chaos. Everyone was talking at once, some siding with Mike, others backing Janet and me. Greg, our boss, was sitting at the head of the table, looking more and more uncomfortable by the second. Finally, he stood up and raised his hands, trying to calm everyone down. All right, let's take a step back here," Greg said, his voice cutting through the noise. "This is getting out of hand. Mike, I understand you're trying to bring in business, but Janet and the others have a point. This could backfire on us if it's not handled carefully." Mike crossed his arms, clearly annoyed. "So what? You're saying I should just let other companies come in and take the work? That doesn't make any sense." "I'm saying we need to think about the long-term consequences," Greg replied, his tone firm. "If this gets out, it could damage our reputation. And not just in Mike's neighborhood. Word spreads fast in this industry. We could lose clients all over the city." Janet nodded in agreement. "Exactly. This isn't just about one contract. It's about how we do business. If we start cutting corners and making shady deals, it's only a matter of time before it catches up with us." Mike rolled his eyes, clearly not convinced. "You guys are overreacting. No one's going to find out. And even if they do, so what? It's not like we're doing anything illegal." "It's not about whether it's illegal," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "It's about whether it's right. And this isn't right." Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, let's table this discussion for now. We'll revisit it later, after everyone's had a chance to cool down. In the meantime, Mike, I want you to think about what's been said here today. We need to be careful about how we approach these kinds of situations." Mike muttered something under his breath but didn't argue further. The meeting wrapped up shortly after that, but the tension in the room was still thick. As we all filed out, I couldn't help but feel a knot of unease in my stomach. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Later that day, I found myself in the break room with Janet, both of us grabbing a cup of coffee. She looked as frustrated as I felt. "Can you believe him?" she said, shaking her head. "I mean, who does he think he is? Just because he's HOA president doesn't mean he gets to make decisions like that." "I know," I replied, stirring my coffee absently. "But the worst part is, he doesn't even see what's wrong with it. He thinks he's doing everyone a favor." Janet sighed, leaning against the counter. "Yeah, well, someone needs to set him straight before this blows up in our faces. If the homeowners find out, they're not going to be happy. And you know how these things go. Once the rumors start, they spread like wildfire." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "We need to talk to Greg again. He's the only one who can really put a stop to this. If Mike keeps pushing, it's only a matter of time before someone outside the company finds out." Janet agreed, and we made a plan to approach Greg later that afternoon. But as the day went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Mike wasn't the type to back down easily, and if he thought he was in the right, he'd fight tooth and nail to prove it. Sure enough, by the end of the day, rumors were already starting to circulate around the office. People were whispering in the hallways, and I could feel the tension growing with every passing hour. It was like a storm brewing on the horizon, and I had no idea how bad it was going to get. As I drove home that night, my mind was racing. What if the homeowners found out? What if they decided to take action against Mike, or worse, against the company? And what if this whole thing ended up costing us more than just a few contracts? I didn't have any answers, but one thing was clear. This wasn't going to end well. And as much as I wanted to believe that Greg would handle it, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all in for a rough ride. The next few days were a blur. Mike kept pushing his agenda, insisting that he was doing what was best for the company. Janet and I tried to reason with him, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Greg was caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace while also protecting the company's reputation. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I got a call from one of our clients. They'd heard rumors about Mike's deal with his HOA, and they weren't happy. In fact, they were considering pulling their contract with us. I felt my stomach drop as I listened to them vent their concerns. This was exactly what we'd been afraid of. The situation was spiraling out of control, and there was no easy way to fix it. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but wonder how much worse it was going to get. Mike's actions had set off a chain reaction, and now we were all paying the price. But the real question was, how far would it go, and how much damage would it do before it was over? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just about Mike anymore. It was about all of us and the choices we made moving forward. And as much as I wanted to believe that we could fix this, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. What he did is most likely illegal, depending on where you are. A president of an HOA cannot legally make decisions for the HOA, which result in primarily personal gain, especially at the expense of other HOA members. That would include business for the place he works at, with the assumption that he would get bonuses, continued employment, etc., for them doing well, and possibly further gains from your boss for orchestrating that business. I'm sure your boss changed the subject before anyone could bring that up. Absolutely. Self-dealing is typically banned or has extra disclosure requirements to make sure everyone is aware of what's happening, and it's still a fair deal. HOA members frequently do things like this and violate fiduciary duties. They seem to think they're immune from suit in these situations too, but breaching fiduciary duties through self-dealing can make them personally liable, and unless there's an insurance policy on the board, that money should come from their own pocket and not the board. Depends on the state whether or not the company could work for the HOA, along with other factors. In my state, you can declare the conflict of interest, abstain from voting on said contract, and roll the dice to see if you win or not. Bids are done in a blind bidding style, so the supposed HOA president, who is also the employee, wouldn't have a clue what to tell his boss to bid in order to potentially win. Bids are opened in an open board meeting, plus even if the president's company's bid was the lowest, you don't have to accept it if you can make a logical good business sense argument to go with a different bid.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.